Shalom, Haverim, and welcome to Hebrew School. Today's lesson is going to be about the conjunction in the Hebrew language. And we're going to read quite a bit of Hebrew text this morning. We'll be in the book of Genesis. So let's go ahead and take a look at the lesson we will have today on the conjunction. Oh, and by the way, let me also mention that the material we'll be using is from this study guide about biblical Hebrew by two Hebrew scholars, Gary Pratico and Miles Van Pelt. And the material we are using is just a 4-page summary of the content of a much larger book on Hebrew grammar. So although we're just using the study guide, if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper into the rules of Hebrew grammar, I encourage you to go ahead and purchase this grammar book. There are some other ones on the market, but this is a very good one. And we're just going to be using a portion of this study guide today. It will be this little section right here that's labeled the conjunction vav with a shva underneath. So let me go back to the portion that we'll be using today to study the conjunction. Conjunctions in any language are kind of connecting words. In this case, in Hebrew, it's just a connecting letter. It's the letter Vav. And it almost always means and, a connecting word. I think sometimes, rarely, it can be, I think what they call an adversative. It could be but, which is kind of the opposite of, joining two ideas together. So we're just going to, for the purposes of this lesson, we're going to assume that the vav most frequently means and. And it is formed by putting a vav at the beginning of a word. The example that's given here is the Hebrew word ish, aleph, yod, and shin. That's the word for man. And if we put a vav in front of it with a shva underneath, then it means and man. You'll also notice that the vowel underneath the vav changes under certain circumstances. Here, the vav, here it's the basic form, the normal form is the shva, is the vav with the shva underneath. But when the vav, the conjunction and, is placed before certain first letters of a word, either vet, mem, or fe, then it changes the vowel underneath the vav. In those three cases, the shva becomes a shurek, or the oo sound. The noun here is melech, which is the Hebrew word for king. And if we wanted to say and a king, it would be u melech, not va melech, but u melech. If that first letter of the noun is before a vocal shva, and here the word is sepharim, which is the Hebrew word for a scribe or a writer, you'll notice that the vowel underneath the first letter of the word samek is a shva. And in this case, it's a vocal shva. The way sepharim is pronounced, the shva gets a little bit of pronunciation. And in that case, also, the vav shva becomes a shurek. So it's usfarim. Before a yod with a shva underneath it, as in the name Yehuda or Judah. Normally, if this name Yehuda just appears in the text without the conjunction in front of it, it's going to have a shva underneath. But when the conjunction, the vav conjunction, is added, then the shva turns into a hirik yod. And since this is a vowel between the vav and the hey, then the shva drops out. I think it drops out all the time. There may be some occasions when it remains there, but in this case, it's dropped out. So this is the name Yehuda, and if you wanted to say and Judah, you'd say Vihuda, Vihuda. Before Hatef vowels, which I think are these kind of combination vowels of a shva and either a patak or a kametz or even a segal, like we have here, then the shva underneath the vav turns into a patach. And before a tonic syllable, which I don't really know exactly what a tonic syllable is, but an example is the double segal in the word lechem, which is the Hebrew word for bread. So if you wanted to say and bread, it would be va with a kametz, lechem, va lechem. By the way, anashim here is the plural of ish. If ish is man, then anashim would be men. So I don't want you to be very concerned about all these different cases where the vowel underneath the vav is going to change. That's only important if you start writing or translating English into Hebrew. Then you would want to know which vowel to place under your vav conjunction. But as long as we're going from Hebrew to English, translating in that direction, just be aware that if there's a vav used as a prefix before a noun or a word that you recognize, like ish or melech or sfarim, that vav is always going to be a conjunction. So when you translate that, it would be and a man, or and man, or and a melech, a king, or and king, and so forth. So just recognize the vav. That's all you're interested in now. And we will assume that the Sopharim, the scribes who wrote the Hebrew Bible that we're looking at, got the right vowel to connect with our vav conjunction. So vav almost always means and. Okay, let us go ahead to our text for today. We're going to be in the book of Genesis, and I am going to try to get all the way through Genesis chapter 1. It's about 30 or 31 verses, I think, so it's a lot of Hebrew text. And what I recommend is that as you're watching this video, when you start to daydream and drift away, your attention drifts, I encourage you to stop the video and take it up at some later time when you're able to focus better. It will be very challenging for you to focus your attention on 31 verses of Hebrew text. So feel free to divide this video into 2 sections or 3 sections or however many sections are comfortable for you. I want to review the first 2 verses that we looked at in a prior lesson, the first 2 verses of Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In Hebrew, it is Bereshith, in particle prefix, Reshit. The root word there is Rosh, which means head or the beginning. Bara is a verb meaning to create, and it is a third person masculine singular verb, which is important when you look at the subject noun of the word, which is Elohim, which is one of the most common words in the Bible. It's the standard word for God. In this case, it is a masculine plural noun. And one of the things we talked about previously is that in Hebrew, as in all languages, the number of a subject and its verb should always match. So this should either be a singular form of the word Elohim, like Eloha, which is the singular form. The dual form would be Elohim, which would be 2 in number. And this is a plural, so it's 3 or more, Elohim. So this verb should either be a plural verb, which would be baram with a mem on the end, or God is trying to tell us something. And what we suggested the last time we looked at this is that God is trying to reveal to us that he exists in a plurality of persons, 3 persons, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But that is one God. Those 3 persons are one God. They are in unity and harmony. And that one God, he created. That's why the verb is singular. So we've got a singular verb and a plural subject. And it tells us already in the first verse of the Bible that God is triune, or he is plural in personage. Et is the direct object indicator. Hashamayim, the et haaretz. God created the heavens and the earth. In verse 2, we read ve, and here is our particle conjunction, vav. It's Scottish va underneath it, so this is the normal use of the vav conjunction. And haaretz, aretz is the root word for earth, with the hey definite article in front of it is the earth. So we've got and the earth, haita, was or became. The root word here is haya. It's the verb of being. It can either be translated was or became, depending on the context, depending on what the rest of the Bible tells us. So either the earth was tohu, vavohu, formless and void, when it was originally created, in which case this haita would be translated was, as the New King James Version of the Bible has it, as you can see in our English translation on the right column. What we did when we studied this before was we went to Isaiah 45:18, where God, through the prophet Isaiah, talks about how he created the earth originally in the beginning, and that it was not tohu, it was not formless and void, but it was created in such a way that it would support life, it would support habitation. So because Isaiah 45:18 says that the original condition of the creation was not formless and void, we decided to translate haita as became, the earth became formless and void. Vehoshek, and darkness was al panei, upon the face of, tahom, the deeps. That's a reference to a flood of judgment that God brought upon the earth. Veruach Elohim, and the Spirit of God, marach hefet, hovered or fluttered over the al panei hamayim, over the surface of the waters. This flood, the deeps, and the reference to the waters is a flood that took place according to Isaiah 14:12 and following, and Ezekiel 28:12 and following. At least in the King James Version and the New King James Version, it is said to be a judgment that was upon Lucifer. Now, the modern translations of the Bible, the more critical translations, do not use the name Lucifer, which is familiar to most Bible readers as the name of the devil, a created angel. And the flooded condition of the earth, the tohu and vohu, formless and voidness condition of the earth, came about as a result of Lucifer's rebellion against God. Book of Revelation tells us that he took about a third of the angels with him in his rebellion, and that the earth was flooded in judgment as a result. Later in history, in the story of Noah, the earth is flooded again because of the rebellion, not solely of Lucifer and the angels, but also because of the rebellion of mankind. And of course, then after the flood of Noah, God promises that he will never destroy the earth and its population again by means of a flood. Later in the Bible, in the judgment passages in Revelation and so forth, we see that the earth, the present heavens and the earth, will be consumed by fire. They'll be either consumed or refined by fire. So that's how the flood came about, as a result of the judgment upon the rebellious, the fallen angels, and Lucifer. We don't know how long the earth was in that condition of being flooded, how long it was formless and void. And I think we spoke also about the fact that in debates between creationism and evolution, the age of the earth is usually the central focus of those debates, with this recognition that the earth is much older than just 6,000 years old, or it can be much older than 6,000 years in longevity. The Bible believer can argue that the earth may be billions and billions of years old, or maybe it's only 10 or 12,000 years old. But certainly at least somewhat older than the 6,000 years that are recorded beginning in the next verse of Genesis here. So let's go ahead to Genesis 1:3. Va, here's our particle conjunction. And because it comes before a yod, it turns into a patak. The vowel is a patak. So we've got va, yomer, Elohim, God, and God said, Yehi. This is a form of the verb haya, and in this case, it would be translated, let there be. Our information window at the bottom of the page says this is a jussive form of the third person singular verb to be. So it would be let there be, or is the Hebrew word for light. Va, here's our particle conjunction again, va yahi, and there was, or, and there was light. So God said, let there be light, and there was light. Va yara, here we have the particle conjunction, vav, with a patak, because it comes before a yod. Va yara, the root word here is resh, aleph, hey. It's the standard word, most common word for seeing, like seeing with the eyes. So God saw, yara, Elohim is the subject, is God. God is the subject. So saw God, or we would say in English, God saw, et haor, the light, ki, that, tov. Tov is the Hebrew word for good or pleasant. God saw that it was good. Vayavdel, here we've got our vav particle conjunction. Yavdel, let's see, vet, dalet, lamed is the Hebrew word for dividing or segmenting. God divided, Elohim divided, Yavdel, ben, between, Haor, ubein, Hahoshek, between the light and between the darkness. Now, that sounds a little awkward in English. In English, we say God divided the light from the darkness, or between the light and the darkness. But here in Hebrew, it is typical, it's standard for the word bein, between, to be repeated with both reference. So Yavdel, but divided, Elohim, Bain, between Haor, Ubain, between HaHoshek. He divided between the light and the darkness. Go down to verse 5 here. Vayikra, Kara, Kuf Resh Aleph is the Hebrew word for to call or to name something. Sometimes it also means to meet someone or connect with someone. So here's our Vav conjunction, Vayikra, and called Elohim, God called, Laor, he called to the light, like he called its name to it, La, or, here's the word or, Yom. Yom is what he called it. It was the name or the label that he attached to the light. That's our conjunction, and Lahoshek, to the darkness, Kara, he called the name Lila. Lila is the Hebrew word for night. Vayahi, here's our conjunction, and Yahi, and was Erev. Erev is the Hebrew word for evening. It actually literally means to mix. Erev means to mix one thing with another. So the evening is the time of the day when the light begins to mix with darkness. It begins to get kind of dusky, and it's not as sunny as the earth or the sun starts to dip below the western horizon and so forth. So Arab is the Hebrew word for evening. Va, our conjunction, and Yahi was voker. Boker is the root word for morning, boker. Yom, and there was boker, morning. There was evening, and there was morning. Yom is the Hebrew word for a day, echad. Now, sometimes people who are trying to reconcile the biblical narrative of creation with an evolutionary idea say that the word yom, sometimes in the Bible, has kind of a symbolic reference to a period of time longer than 24 hours, or one rotation of the earth, a period of darkness and a period of light. So they say it's a different period of time than 24 hours. Now, it is true that the word yom is sometimes used as a large period of time, but the Ten Commandments in Exodus chapter 20 identify the length of these 6 creative or creative days as being one rotation of the earth, one day, not necessarily a day of 24 hours. If the earth at the time of its creation or restoration here was revolving at the same rate that it's revolving now, then it would be a 24-hour day. But we're going to suggest a little bit later on that at this time, the Earth may have been revolving faster. So it may have been an even shorter day than 24 hours. So Yehi Voker, Yehi Erev, Yehi Voker, Yom Echad. Echad is the Hebrew word for one. It's just counting the days here. There are going to be 6 of them in which God created or restored the earth from its condition of being tohu and vohu. It was inhabited once by the angels and perhaps pre-Adamic creatures who lived before Adam was created. Adam will be created later in this chapter. So it was inhabited at that time. Then because of the rebellion and sin of the angels and perhaps those pre-Adamite creatures, the earth was judged. It was tohu and bohu for a while, maybe a long time, maybe a short time. And then God begins to reconstruct it. So this is the first day of reconstruction, or we can say the 6 days of creation. Verse 6, Vayomer, and Yomer, he created, God, or I'm sorry, he said, God said, Elohim is the subject. Yahi, let there be, this is our jussive form of the verb chaya, let there be rakia. Now, rakia is translated here as expanse or firmament. This is a figurative or symbolic use of a term in Hebrew that means like a metal lid that you put on a pot. It's a covering. It is a usually kind of a curved um, covering, like I say, like a cover for a pot, or it's the idea of a dome. So it's a covering for the surface of the earth. And we'll see why God wanted to create this covering. What it's going to turn out to be is the atmosphere that surrounds the earth. It's also going to be called the sky. I don't think atmosphere is a term that's used in the Bible, but that's what it's describing. The rakia, the expanse or the firmament. Firmament is an old King James word, but it's a good one. And the rakia was batok, which means in the midst of or between, Hamaim, the waters, Vayehi, Mavdil, and it was caused to divide Bain Maim Lamaim. Caused the rakia was created to divide one gathering of waters from another gathering of waters. Now, the knee-jerk reaction to this, the knee-jerk interpretation would be that it was dividing one ocean, say the Atlantic Ocean from the Pacific Ocean. But a covering for the earth would not do that. It would not serve to do that. Actually, the continents, the dry land divides between the gatherings of water, the various gatherings of water that are on the surface of the earth. So we're talking about 2 bodies of water, or gatherings of water, collections of water that are on the earth that the atmosphere divided. We'll go to verse 7 here to see if we can get any more information about this situation. Va and Ya'as is the Hebrew word for made. And you'll notice that in these verses 3 and following of Genesis chapter 1, the verb bara, which you'll remember means to create from nothing, is rarely used. It's occasionally used when God creates something absolutely new that was never on the earth before. But here he uses the word asa. So God made, that is, he made the stuff he's making now out of pre-existing material. The material universe came into existence in the original creation, um, uh, when God spoke it into existence. Um, uh, and now as he is kind of restoring it to a habitable state, he's making things instead of creating things out of nothing. So Ya'as Elohim, God made et harakia. The rakia is that covering or the atmosphere or expanse or the firmament that we've just been talking about. V'yavdel, and he divided Bain Hamayim, between the waters, Asher, which are mitachat, means underneath, underneath Larakia. Now that's easy for us to understand. The waters that are underneath the rakia or the atmosphere would be the oceans and the rivers and the lakes that are on the surface of the earth. So that is one body of waters, those that are below the rakia, the atmosphere. Uban, and between Hamayim, the waters, Asher, which are Me'al. Me'al means over or above La Rakia, above the Rakia. Vayahi, and it was Ken, it was so. It was the way God wanted it to be. Now, if you think about this, what this is saying is that there are bodies of water that are on the surface of the earth below the rakia, but there also were bodies of water above the rakia. How can that be? Some people would suggest that it's a reference to the clouds, and that's a possibility. A scientist named Immanuel Velikovsky wrote a number of books where he proposed that in the earliest ages of the Earth, there was a vapor canopy. There was like a kind of a cloud canopy or a vapor canopy above the firmament, above the atmosphere that and that it surrounded the Earth. And that is a possibility. I'm going to suggest one more possibility, and let me show you a book that I am familiar with. It's called The Rings of Earth. It's by Larry Cloud, which is a kind of a convenient, kind of an ironic name almost. And it refers to the waters above the firmament. That's what we're talking about, of Genesis 1:7. And look at the picture on the cover. This, I mean, it looks like Saturn, doesn't it? But this is a picture of the Earth. Here's the North American continent. And here are rings like the rings of Saturn. Now, if you do a little scientific research on the planet Saturn, the rings of Saturn are actually formed of ice crystals because they are so high above the warmth of the planet. The planet is warmed to a degree by the sun. The rings around Saturn are actually ice crystals or molecules that are visible because they're frozen, and it looks like rings around the Earth. Well, Larry Cloud is suggesting that there was at one time rings around the Earth also. Now, we talked about the rotation speed of the Earth, and now the Earth revolves in like a 24-hour period of time, and one period of darkness and one period of light is a day. It's a 24-hour day for us. In order to get rings to form around the Earth, like the rings of Saturn, the Earth would have to rotate considerably faster than it rotates now. Right now, the angular velocity of about any point on the Earth is about like 1,100 miles per hour. I think the Earth is about 24,000, 25,000 miles all the way around. So every hour you're going to be going about 11,000 miles. And because the atmosphere, the rakia, rotates with the Earth, if there were waters above that firmament, if the Earth was rotating fast enough, and I think Larry Cloud suggests like 6 or 7 times faster than it's rotating now, you wouldn't notice it if you were walking around on the surface of the Earth, because the atmosphere rotates with the Earth. So it wouldn't be any windier than it is right now. But that would provide enough angular momentum, enough um, force, I guess, to keep those water crystals, the waters above the firmament, in orbit around the Earth. And since it rotates in the direction that it does, eventually these ice crystals would kind of gravitate towards the place of rotation. It shows here around the equator, and it would form rings instead of a kind of a consistent layer of water or vapor. So centrifugal force would form these rings. One interesting thing about this idea is that if the Earth was rotating considerably faster, the length of a day would be, in terms of hours, much shorter than it is now. And what this would produce, since time is measured by rotations of the planet, and of course, the phases of the moon and orbits of the Earth around the sun. Since a day is determined by one rotation of the Earth, a person who was living 70 years today would experience, in the Genesis era, would experience the Earth rotating many more times during his lifetime than he does now. So if the Earth was rotating considerably faster, it would keep the waters above the firmament in orbit, and people would be living very long lifespans. If they just counted the days of their lives, they would be living multiple hundreds of years, which in fact is what we read in the book of Genesis. People like Melchizedek lived 969 years. Well, maybe that was a fairly normal lifespan, of 100 or so years, but the Earth was rotating so much faster that when he kept track of all the rotations of the Earth in his lifetime, it counted as over 900 years. So that is a possibility. I didn't want to go into too much depth with that, but I wanted to explain at least a couple of options, including Larry Cloud's theory that there were literal waters in orbit around the Earth, and that the Earth was rotating much faster. And that may be an explanation for why people in the Bible live such very long lifespans. Then later on, when lifespans are reduced, the rotation of the Earth would slow down. People would live much shorter lifespans. And because the rotation of the Earth slowed, then the gravitational pull would bring the ice crystals, or the waters above the firmament, would be drawn by the force of gravity to the Earth, and would fall to the Earth in the form of rain and mist and things like that. And interestingly enough, this happens about the time of the flood of Noah. So it may explain where all the waters came from that provided enough water to completely cover the surface of the Earth. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with verse 8. Vayikra, and called Elohim, God called La Rakia. He called, in other words, he attached a label or a name to the Rakia, the firmament, and the name was Shemaim. Shemaim. This is the word heavens. It is said here to be in the plural, but you will recognize this as the dual. We talk about this when we study the first two verses. Shemaim is actually a dual form, but it's since English doesn't have a dual form, it's translated in English as the plural. Vayahi, and was Erev, evening, Vayahi Voker, and there was morning, Yom, day, Sheni. Sheni is the Hebrew word for the second or the number two. Vayomer, and said, Elohim, God said, Yikavu, kavu or kava is the Hebrew root word for gathering together, for a collection or a gathering. So God said, kavu, gather together, hamaim, the waters, mitahat, underneath, hashamayim, underneath the heavens. And we've already said that the name that God gave to the rakia, the atmosphere or the covering over the earth, is the heavens, hashamayim. So we're talking about the waters that are under the rakia. So he gathered them together into oceans, into lakes, into rivers, and various size of bodies of water. Tahat hashamayim el makom echad, into one place. So he didn't want them scattered all over the surface of the earth. He wanted them gathered into one place. Va'atira, and God saw. I'm sorry. This is the word appear. V'tera'e, and appear. Hayavasha. The dry land. Vasha is the word for dry land. Vayahi, and it was, Ken, and it was so. So when God gathered the waters together, those that are underneath the rakia or under the heavens, into one place, then dry land appeared. So when he gathered the waters together, it allowed the waters on the surface of the earth to appear when the waters were gathered together. Vayikra, let's get 10 up here. Vayikra, and he called, Elohim, God called, La Yavasha, to the dry land, Yavash, to the dry land. Eretz, that's what he called it, the name of the dry land. He called it Earth. Now, Eretz can mean the planet Earth. It can, as it does here, it means the dry land parts of the earth, the continents. It can also be a reference to a particular land or country. In the Bible, Haaretz, the land, is often a reference to the promised land, the land of Israel. Ula mikveh, and to the gathering, Hamaim, of the waters, Kara, he called, Yamim. Yam, Yod Mem, is the Hebrew word for ocean. Since Yamim here is plural, the im ending, because there's more than one ocean on the planet, it's the seas or the oceans. Vaya, Elohim, God saw Kitov, that it was good. Now, before we move on to verse 11, I want to talk about one word here. God spoke to the gathering of the waters, to the Yamim, or to the oceans. The root word here is mikveh. Mikveh is the word for a gathering together of waters or anything really. It's also defined as a reservoir in our information window. Mikveh is also the Hebrew word for like a baptismal pool. It's a kind of it's like an in-ground swimming pool, or it could be like above ground also, but it's a gathering of waters. It's like a tub or a font or like a hot tub, a place where people can be baptized. Uh, Taval is the Hebrew word for being baptized. So be familiar with mikveh. It means a gathering of something, usually waters, but it's also, when it's used as a noun, it's called it's a baptismal body of water, a pool, or a place to be baptized. Verse 11, Vayomer, and he said, Elohim said, Tadshe haaretz, tadashe, dasha means to sprout or to grow. It's like a shoot that comes up from the ground. So he's making plant life here. Deshe is plant life. So God said, here it's a verb. It's used as a verb, a singular jussive verb. Let sprout haaretz, the earth, in that case, the dry land. Deshe, things that sprout. Asev is a grass or a plant that kind of naturally grows from the dry land. Mazri'ah is the Hebrew verb for sowing. Mazri'ah, zera, like producing seed. Zera is seed, or zri'ah is sowing, seeds. Eitz is the Hebrew word for a tree. Peri is the fruit of a tree. So God caused what? Seed-bearing trees to spring forth, or deshe, from the earth. Asa, made, pari, fruit, lamino, according to its kind or type, or genus, or like all these different scientific divisions or groupings of living things. Mineo. The Bible makes it clear that apple trees produce apples. They don't produce oranges. So they produce fruit according to their kind or their type. Asher zara'o vo, whose or which have seed. Zara'o, his seed. Vo is in it. Al haaretz, upon the earth. Vayehi, and it was ken. It was so. It was, yes, it was the way God wanted it to be. Verse 12, vatotse, and caused to go out. Haaretz, the earth caused to go out. Deshe, grass. The earth produced grass. Asev, plants. Deshe, we've already said, means to sprout forth. Asev is grass. Mazri'ah, the producing seed. Zera, a seed. Liminehu, according to its kind. Va'etz, and a tree. Asev, making. Pari, asher zra'o, which its seed is in it. Laminehu, according to its kind. Vayara, and saw Elohim, God, ki tov, that it was good. So the earth brought forth what? Grasses and shrubs and smaller plants, and also trees with their seed in them that bore fruit. And of course, the fruit of these plants makes more plants. That's God's cycle of life for the botanical world. Verse 13, Vayehi, and it was, Erev, evening, a mixture of dark and light, Vayehi, and it was, a boker, or voker, it was morning, evening and morning, Yom, day, Shlishi, the third day. Verse 14, Vayomer, and God said, said, and he said, Elohim, God said, Yahi, let there be, ma'orot, lights. This is a noun. The verb is or, to shine. God said, Yihi or, let light shine, and it did. In the first day, here he is referring to the shining of lights, barakia, in the rakia, or the firmament, Chashamayim, the firmament of the heavens. Heavens is the name that God gave to the firmament, or the expanse, or the atmosphere. Lechavdil, to divide, bain, between, hayom, between the day, ubain, and between, halayla, and between the night. Vayehi, and let them be, laot, for, oat is like a sign or a significant marked out thing. Ula moadim, these are appointed times, significant days, holidays or holy days. Ula yamim, yom is the Hebrew word for day, for appointed times, and days, like holy days, significant days. And shanaim, and years. Now, this verse is not saying that the sun and the moon and the stars, as they'll be identified in the next couple of verses, did not exist until this day. This is the fourth day of the creation, or the restoration of the earth to a habitable state. It doesn't mean that the sun, moon, and stars didn't exist before this. They probably existed before the earth became tohu and bohu, before Satan and the fallen angels were judged. And they certainly existed before the fourth day, because we had evening and we had morning in the first 3 days to mark those days, a period of darkness and a period of light. So the sun, moon, and the stars existed before the fourth day. But here God commands them in their orbits, in their position in the solar system, so that their consistent rotations, their consistent orbits, will serve as kind of a way to measure time. Days are one rotation of the earth. A month is, one cycle of the moon, from new moon to new moon. A year is one rotation of the earth around the sun, consisting of 4 seasons. So God positions these lights in the heavens, in the rakia. Now, it doesn't mean that the sun and the moon are inside the atmosphere of the earth. It's just that they appear on they appear to be on the surface of the rakia, of the atmosphere. So that's kind of a figure of speech. But he puts them in their places, in their order, in their established rotations and orbits, to measure time, to measure days, months, years, and significant moadim. these appointed times, marked out, and holy days and months and weeks and so forth. So then we have verse 15, Ve'ha'u, let them be, la ma'orot, for lights, barakia, they're going to light up the atmosphere, chashamayim, of the heavens, la ha'ir, to shine, or is the Hebrew word to be a light or to shine, al, upon, ha'aretz, upon the earth, vayehi, and it was, ken, and it was so. Verse 16 is going to tell us a little bit more about these particular lights in the cosmos. Vaya'as, and God made, Elohim is the subject, God made, et, shnei, et is the direct object indicator, shnei is the Hebrew word for two, ha-ma'orot, the lights, ha-gadolim, the great lights. So he made two great lights, et hamaor, the shining hagadol, the greater of the shining lights, lemem shelet, to rule over or have dominion over Hayom. So he made two great lights. One of them is obviously the sun. It's not named here, but it's the greatest of the two lights that he made to rule over the day. So when the sun is overhead, and the planet is light where we're living, and it warms up the surface of the earth, then the sun is ruling over that part of the rotation, which is the day. Va'et, and the ha'or, hakaton, and the light, the smaller one, hakaton is small or younger, mem shelet, to rule over or to have dominion over, halayla, the light. So that one would be the moon. The greater of the two is the sun, which rules the day, and the smaller of the two would be the moon, which rules over the night. So if the sun is shining on the moon reflects a little bit of light onto the earth, even in periods of darkness. So when the part of the earth that we live on is away from the sun, we can still see because of the reflected light of the moon. Va'et, and the direct object of ha-kokavim. Kokav in Hebrew is the word for the stars. So the stars also help with navigation. They're kind of in fixed positions with reference to the earth. So it's easy to kind of navigate on the earth using the stars as definite positions. God did not create them on this day, but he made them, Ya'as Elohim, he made them to do the things that he ordered them to do. He made them serve a purpose. He didn't bring them into existence, but he made them serve this purpose of providing light, dividing between day and night, and being able to measure times and seasons and so forth. Verse 17, Vayeten, and he gave Otam, he gave them, This is verse 17, and my English isn't sticking with me here, but he set them, or he gave them, set them, Elohim set them, Barakia Hashamayim, in the firmament of the heavens. And again, this is not suggesting that the sun is underneath the top surface of the rakia or the atmosphere, but it is seen out there kind of through the rakia, I guess. La ha'ir, to light, to provide light, al haaretz, upon the earth. Velemashol, verse 18. Maybe I can get these two together now. Okay. Velemashol, and to rule, mashal is to rule, bayom, in the day, and valayla, and in the night. Lachavdil, and to divide, bain, between, haor, the light, ubain, and between, hahoshek. That's what a day does. That's what one rotation of the earth does. Vayra, and he saw, Elohim, God saw, ki tov, that it was good. Verse 19, Vayachi erev, and there was evening, Vayachi boker, and there was morning, Yom, a day, Revi'i. Revi'i is the Hebrew word for four, or the fourth day. Vayomer Elohim, and said Elohim, Yishretzu. Yishretzu means to swarm or be populated in massive numbers. So God is going to cause a lot of creatures to come forth, swarms of creatures. The English word here is abound. It's translated with abound. Hamaim, the waters, so the oceans, the lakes, the rivers are to abound. Shiratsu, to swarm. Sheretz, swarming things. Nefesh. Nefesh is a creature. It's literally the Hebrew word for soul. So these are living creatures. Nefesh chaya is a chaya with a chet, not a hey. Hey is hey, yod, hey is the Hebrew word for to be. Chet, yod, hey is the Hebrew word for to be alive. Ve, and oaf. An oaf is a bird. It's also the word for a creature that has wings. It has to do with wings and flying. Ya'ofef, flying birds. There are some birds that don't fly. These are the flying birds, the ones that swarm in the atmosphere. Al haaretz, upon the earth. Al panei, upon the face of, a rakia. And again, I mean, the birds aren't out there where the sun and the moon and the planets and stars are. They are in fact within the rakia, hashamayim, of the heavens. Verse 21, vayibara. Now here we have the word bara, which means to create from nothing. So because he made the birds and the swarming creatures and the plants and stuff, I assume that those things existed before the flood of destruction and the condition of tohu and bohu. But what he's going to make now, he's going to create, which means probably is an implication that these creatures didn't exist before and they're kind of brand new. So Va and Yivra created Elohim And you'll just notice that consistently the subject comes after the verb. Created God, God created. Et hatanin, direct object indicator. Hatanin is the tanin, the dragons, the monsters, the serpents, the creatures. Um, you know, a lot of people suggest that these are the whales that swim the oceans. Um, uh, I think it's interesting that one of the English words that is used to translate this is dragons. Dragons may have actually existed at one point. They may not just be mythological creatures, but they may have actually existed on the earth. So these tanin, these great creatures, hagadolim, the great ones, the big ones, big animals, va'et, direct object indicator, and at call nefesh, and every soul having chaya, living thing. Every soul having living thing. Nefesh is it's usually translated as soul, but it's I guess more literally and specifically, it's air breathing. Um, Animals that have a breathing apparatus like lungs and noses and stuff. Ha-romeset, that swarm, asher, which shartzu, hamayim, that swarm in the waters. Leminechem, according to their kinds. Again, we've said that trees and plants reproduce according to their kinds. Well, the same thing is true of fish and birds and other creatures. They reproduce according to their kinds. So, like a man is not going to give birth to a horse, or I should say, a woman. Va'et, direct object indicator. Call oaf, every or all, oaf, kanaf. Kanaf is another word for wing. So this is a bird that has wings. Laminehu, according to their kind. Vayar, and he saw, Elohim saw, ki tov, that it was good. Verse 22, va, and yavarek, he blessed otam, them, he blessed them. Elohim blessed them. Lemor, saying, paru, this is a command. It's like to be fruitful, reproduce. Ravu, and increase, make more of whatever you are. He's saying this to the plants. He's saying this to the animal kingdom. In other words, be fruitful and multiply yourselves. Milu, and fill, et hamayim, fill the waters, bayamim, the waters of the seas, ve'ha'of, and the birds, yira, yirev, multiply, ba'aretz, in the earth. Verse 23, vayehi, and it was erev, it was erev, it was evening, vayehi, and it was boker, morning, yom, a day, chamishi. Chamish is the Hebrew word for number 5 or 5th. We're getting close here. Verse 24, Vayomer Elohim, and said Elohim, Totsei, so you should go out, something should go out, haaretz, from the earth, nefesh, chaya, a soulish living thing, breathing creatures, lamina, according to their kind, bahema, a bahema or behemoth is it's translated beast here. It's a large animal, a large earth creature. So it'd be like elephants and hippopotamuses and like larger cattle like oxen and so forth. The remes and the creeping things. Remeth is to creep. We've talked about the swarming things. These are the creeping things. And you can imagine that these are reptiles and amphibians and so forth. Vachayoto, and let them live on the eretz, on the earth, lamina, according to their kind, vayehiken, and it was so. So God created the cattle and the creeping things, the reptiles and amphibians on the earth. Vaya'as, Elohim, and God made Elohim et chayat haaretz, the living things of the earth, lamina, according to their kind, ve'et habachema, the bigger living things of the earth, lamina, according to its kind, ve'et kol remes, and all of the lizards and reptiles, the remes, the creeping things, ha'adamah. Adamah is the Hebrew word for the ground. Here he doesn't use haaretz, he doesn't use the earth or the dry land, but he talks about the Adamah. Adam is the Hebrew word for red. It means red, but it's also Adam is the Hebrew word for man. So man was made from the dirt, from the ground. So the first man, I guess God called him Adam, which is literally dirt man, man made from the dirt. Leminehu, according to their kind, vara, and saw Elohim, God, ki tov, that it was good. And then God said, verse 26 is going to talk about the creation of mankind. Vayomer, and God said, Elohim, and God said, naaseh. Now, this is interesting. This is a plural form, a like third person plural form of the verb to make. So actually what God is saying is, let us make. The three persons of the Trinity. Let us make Adam, a man, a guy made out of dirt, but in Tsalmenu. Tselem is the Hebrew word for the image. New, this new ending, is also third person plural, which means our image, in the image of us. Kidamutenu, damut is like the likeness, the similarity. God wants to make people in his image and in his likeness. And yir, do, let them have dominion, or let them rule, like the stars and the planets rule the days and the nights and the times and seasons. So God created man to rule. Bidagat, dag is the Hebrew word for fish. This is the plural, so over the fish, plural. Hayam, of the sea. Uva, oaf, and in or over the birds, hashamayim, of the heavens, v'bachema, the bigger kind of domesticated creatures of the earth, uva kol haaretz, and over all the earth, uva kol ha-remes, over all the creeping things, ha-romeset, ha-romes, which the creeping things which creep, al haaretz. Vayivra, so he made, I'm sorry, he created. Now, earlier in this verse, in verse 26, God said, let us make. So he proposed to make human beings out of already existing material, like the dirt of the earth, the soil of the earth. That's what he used to make the physical part of man. But here in verse 27, he says, and he created. To create from nothing implies that mankind was unique, had never existed before during the age of angels, before the earth was tohu and bohu. So Yivra created, Elohim, God created, et ha'adam. He created a direct object indicator, the Adam, the man. Ba in Salmo, in his image, but Selem, in the image, Elohim, then the image of God, bara, he created, oto, him. Zakar is the Hebrew word for a male. Literally, it means to remember or to recall. So the male is memorable. U and nakeva is the Hebrew word for female. Nakav means to pierce. And since God is going to command them to be fruitful and multiply, you can imagine where this idea of the female being pierced by the reproductive body parts of the man, that's how human beings reproduce. So we've got the memorable man and the pierced woman. Bara, he created Otam, he created them. Vayavarek, and he blessed Otam, God blessed them. Elohim is the subject. Elohim, Yivarak, he blessed Otam, them, that would be the man and the woman. Vayomer, and he said, Lachem, to them, Elohim, again the subject, God said to them, Pagu, be fruitful, Uravu, and multiply, Milu, and fill, et haaretz. This is the same thing that God said to the botanical life, to the trees and the flowers and bushes and everything. He commanded them to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Also to the animal creation, God commanded them to be fruitful and multiply. And here also he commands mankind to do the same. Kivseha, keves is a Hebrew verb meaning to subdue. Uradu, to rule over, so subdue the earth and rule over it. Bidgat, rule over the fish. Hayam, of the sea. Uva Of, and over the birds. Hashamayim, of the skies or the heavens. Uva Kol, and in all Chaya, over every living thing. Ha Romeset, which moves over the earth, which creeps over the earth. Al Haaretz, upon the earth. Verse 29, Vayomer Elohim, and God said, Hine, behold, Natati, I have given, Lechem, to you, et, direct object indicator, Kol Esev, all of the green plant life, the herbs, Zorea, seed, Zerah, sowed, Asher, which, Al, which is upon, Paneh, the face of, Kol Haaretz, the face of all the earth. Va'et Kol, and overall, eights, over every tree, Asher, which, bo, in it, pri, eitz, the fruit of the tree. So God gives the fruit trees. It's going to be food for Adam and Eve. Zorea, sowing seed, zara, zorea, zara, lachem, the seed that is sowed in them. Yichye will be la'akla, to, for the purpose of akla, of eating, of having food. Ulechol chayat, and to all the living things, haaretz, of the earth. Ulechol, and to all the oaf, the birds, hashamayim, of the heavens. Ulechol, and to all romeset, romes, the creepy crawly things, al haaretz. So it's going to be food for the plant life is going to be food for all the creatures. Asher bo, which is in it, nefesh, a chaya, a soul that is living, et, direct object indicator, kol, and all, yerech, the green grass, ace of the plant life, la'akla, to for food. Vayehi, and it was, Ken, and it was so. Last verse, Vayar, and God saw, Elohim, et, direct object indicator, call, everything, asher, which, asa, which he had made, vehine, and behold, tov, it was good, but not just good, it was tov me'od, it was very good. Va, and yehi, and it was erev, there was evening. Vayehi boker, and there was morning. Yom, a day. Hashishi, shishi is the Hebrew word for sixth day. And that's where the chapter ends. The creation, or the kind of reconstruction story, will continue in chapter 2, and we will take that up in a later lesson. This was just a ton of Hebrew verses that we looked at today, and I really kind of hope you have divided it into portions, and that you'll watch this video at more than one sitting. But you have heard Hebrew read and spoken, and just the repetition of seeing Hebrew words and hearing them pronounced, and the definitions of those words given is like very important for improving your vocabulary. You're probably becoming familiar with some of the Hebrew root words, probably very familiar with a lot of words like Elohim keeps cropping up. Amar is to say. The earth, haaretz, and hashamayim, and the heavens. God is making stuff. He's saying stuff. Amar ve'asa. He's even creating things. Bara. So hopefully you're becoming familiar with some of these words, and that is like the main goal that I have in Hebrew school, is just to just kind of bombard you with Hebrew texts. We're going to study a little bit of grammar here and there, and we're going to spend a lot of time reading these Hebrew texts and just kind of slowly going through them and talking about the words and the significance of those words. And hopefully that will become part of our memory of the words, our understanding of the words, and just the familiarity of how the Hebrew language sounds when it's spoken. So let me give you the blessing, and then we will call it quits. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. In Yeshua's name, amen.